Hey, Bon.
Oh, well, hello, Jennifer Wilner. And hello, everybody. I'm so happy you're here. This is a very exciting day and an important day. I want to welcome all of our viewers who are coming to us this afternoon, 3 o'clock Eastern. I'm Bonnie Low-Kramen. I'm here in my home office in Ponte Vedra, Florida. And Jen, I'm here with my assistant, Jen Wilner, who we've been together for 7 years. Jen, where are you today?
I'm here in Edison, New Jersey.
Fantastic. So, which is where I used to live, and now I'm in Florida. But Jen and I can't live without each other, right, kiddo?
That's right. Absolutely.
So we hope that when you enter the chat that anyone listening can tell us where they are today, where you are today, and please be sure to include any questions and comments, because this is a very special episode of Facebook Live. The subject that we're talking about, we're calling the basics of being an anti-racist. And I have invited a special guest to join us today. She happens to be a BTUAer, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm very excited to talk about this. So Jen, I'm going to thank you, and I'm going to talk for a couple of minutes, and then we'll invite our special guest on, okay?
You got it. All right.
All right. So, and I don't see the comments yet, but I'm going to put that. Oh, yes, I do. We've got Houston, Texas. Hey, Lillian. Welcome, welcome. Happy you're here. So, as we all know, George Floyd was murdered on May 25th of this year, of 2020. And what we also know is that racism has been a problem long before that happened in May. And it continues to be a problem now, which is the reason we absolutely must talk about these issues as they affect us in our lives and as they impact the workplace, without question. I want to tell you why this matters to me so much. At this point in 2020, I have been working in 14 countries and 38 states, training assistants, talking with leaders and HR and recruiters. And there are a few universal things that I believe I know that are 100% true, that are universal. And one of them is relevant, very relevant to racism. And it is this, that I'm a big fan of psychology. For those of you on the call, you know me, I love psychology. And one of the ideas in psychology, one of the theories comes from Maslow, Abraham Maslow. And one idea that I have is that if more leaders, if more people in the workplace knew about Maslow and the impact of his theory, that the world would be a better place and racism would automatically be reduced, if not eliminated. So let me just share with you what this thing is. What Maslow says is that he talks about the hierarchy of needs, and that as human beings, we're all humans, right? As human beings, we need basic survival things like clothing, shelter, food, water, right? We need basic survival. But after that in the hierarchy come two things: the feelings as humans that we need as basic human. It doesn't matter what color you are, doesn't matter what ethnicity you are, doesn't matter what age you are. We need to feel respected and that we belong. And then only then, if those pieces are in place, can we rise to the top of the hierarchy, which is self-actualization. And that is to be a fully evolved human. So that notion of feeling respect and belonging is the antithesis of racism. And what I have seen worldwide is that when assistants feel that they are respected in their organizations and that they belong, everything is possible. And that the opposite is true. When people feel that they don't belong and that they're disrespected, then that's the setup for failure. And honestly, I have rarely met a human being who can't relate to the idea of feeling left out, not belonging. And sometimes it goes back to childhood, but not belonging, not fitting in, and ostracizing. That's why it feels so awful when in the workplace we hear the nonsense like, well, we're not inviting so-and-so to lunch because we just don't like her. She doesn't fit in. She's not part of us. Or how in high school, when you're not part of the clique. I was never one of those people as part of the in crowd. I get it. I completely understand what it feels like to be left out and not belong. Now, racism takes this to a whole other exponential level, which includes violence and abusive language. So it's those feelings plus a whole other massive amount of layer and pain. The pain of it is what we must address. Now, what we know as assistants in the workplace, it really doesn't matter what issue it is. If we can look at it honestly, then we have a shot at solving it. That's how I see it. And that's how students in our Be the Ultimate Assistant classes attack issues like bullying and the wage gap and sexual harassment. And this issue of racism and discrimination has not been discussed nearly enough. And this Facebook Live is my way of opening it up. Can we solve everything in 30 minutes? Absolutely not. And everybody on this call knows that. But you know what? We're gonna do as much as we can in the time that we have. And I've invited a very special guest. And Jen, if we could bring Regina Deavens onto the screen. Welcome, Regina.
Hi. Hello, everyone.
Yeah. Well, we've got Ontario, Hamilton, Ontario, and California, and Michigan, Houston. So we've got a lot of people on the call so far. I want to tell everybody a little bit about Regina, and then Regina is going to share with us some thoughts on these subjects. So as I shared with you, I first met Regina 7 years ago at the Be the Ultimate Assistant workshop that we did in New York City. And she reminded me today that that was her very first time in New York City, but the first of many. So I feel so happy that BTUA was the catalyst. She's a graduate of Tuskegee University, which is in Alabama, which happens to be where she lives right this minute. And she is a skilled executive assistant and an office organizer with 13 years of experience. And I like to think that BTUA, Vicki and I have contributed to your skill set. She is a trainer, a facilitator, and a leader with a passion for advancing the capacity of a support team. In the last few years, you've worked as an elementary teacher, an intervention teacher. Wow, I'm sure you have some stories there. An instructional coach. Regina is actively looking for new work, and she wants to be working with a high-powered business leader, and at the same time, leading initiatives for diversity and inclusion in the workplace. She cares deeply about these issues, and she certainly has a lot of personal experience with this. So for those of you on the call, Regina is looking for work in either Tampa, Orlando, or the Delaware, Maryland area. So if you have leads for her at the end of Facebook Live, we're going to be giving Regina's contact information. And of course, you're on LinkedIn. So that's a great place to connect with you and to share leads, because anybody who knows me and Jen and all of the efforts with B2A, we know that unemployment is high right now. And so we are eager to help anybody who's motivated to find new work to find it. So welcome, Regina. Thank you for being here, and would love to know your thoughts.
Why, thank you, Bonnie. I just can never thank Bonnie, BTUA, Vicky enough for the huge change they made in my life when we crossed paths 7 years ago. I actually first encountered Bonnie through her book. I read Be the Ultimate Assistant from Amazon. And at the back of the book was contact information. So I followed up with the email that was listed there and waited to hear back from her assistant, or waited for the automated response. Little did I know my phone would ring and Bonnie would be on the other end of that phone call. And she said too many to type. So it was best that we just have a conversation. At that time, I was in Tallahassee, Florida, and I got a job in Dover, Delaware. And I got closer to New York, and reached out to her again. Hey, I'm closer. Let's make the workshop happen. And I met Bonnie and Vicky, and they have been my soul sisters, my advocates, my supporters. They were such a huge catalyst in everything about my career moving forward, and they have touched my life in so many positive ways. And I just will never, ever, ever, ever be able to thank them enough.
I had actually forgotten about that very beginning part, Regina. That really brought back a lot of memories. I remember you were very surprised.
Yes, I was.
I still like the phone. I'm showing my age. I like the phone.
And one thing I also love a lot and love deeply about Bonnie and Vicky is their ability to recognize when things are not in a perfect balance in life, and be courageous enough to just kind of have conversations at the beginning points to address problems and try and come up with solutions, because that's what ultimate assistants do. We find solutions for every situation.
Yes.
And just from a personal standpoint, right now, there's so many things going on in the world. Our nation is in a pandemic. We're losing loved ones to the COVID-19 virus. I personally have lost a family member who I was very close to.
Oh.
And then racial tension is rising to new levels at this point in time in our history. At this current time, I work in a learning environment with a population that is 85% Caucasian and 15% African American. Now, just the basis of those numbers is not at all a problem. It is the embedded biases in the culture that create the problem. Because I am the only African American certified female in my entire building. And it doesn't matter how strong my work ethic is. It doesn't matter how I develop trusting relationships with my parents and students. It doesn't matter the impressive academic growth I can guide my students to every school year. I am still labeled as an outsider, a transplant, and I still have a very hard time just getting the respect of being addressed by my name. I make it a practice to greet my colleagues as Mr. or Miss, Mrs., followed by their name, or coach, if that's what they prefer. Coach so-and-so, coach this, coach that. And on far too many occasions, I get the response of, hey, girl, or the worst insult is, hey, gal, whatever that is. I try to find a soft, intelligent way to address it. So I will emphasize the next time I greet, emphasize the Mrs. such and such, Mr., and to no avail. So I got to the point one day I just had enough. I greeted, good morning, coach, so and so. His response was, gal, how are you this morning? Sir, I'm not a gal. My name is Regina or Miss Deavens because we're in a school system.
Right.
I don't want students addressing me by Regina just yet. And from that, I was labeled as difficult and combative because I just had enough and stood up for myself. I got the label as the angry Black woman. Now, no one considered the 3 months that I had just grinned and bear it, trying to give a soft answer to my hostility, to my disdain.
Regina, how did you learn that you were labeled those things?
A couple of teachers came back and mentioned it to me.
They said it. Okay.
Yes, they verbalized it.
Mm-hmm.
Or they would send students to me who I had great relationships with, be like, can you ask Miss Deavens to do this or do that? Because she's really difficult and combative with the other teachers. So maybe since you have a different relationship with her, you can get the better result from it.
Mm-hmm.
So as Bonnie and I talked about our discussion on today, and we talked about the basics of discrimination in the workplace, and I try to apply them to my personal experience. And when I hear go back to the basics as an elementary teacher, I immediately go back to ABCs, because I don't think it gets more basic than ABCs as far as learning is concerned.
Mm-hmm.
So a couple of suggestions, my personal suggestions for how we can come against this discrimination and exclusion in the workplace. I think we have to first abort. We have to completely abort our personal assumptions about the African American race. And this is an extremely difficult task because it requires the woman in the mirror or the man in the mirror to just take an honest reflection of, what do I think? What do I feel? What was I taught? What did I hear? How much do I feed into? So we have to first, abort every single negative assumption that is made about the African American race. B, we have to completely ban the ugly verbiage, the ugly names,
Mm-hmm.
the ugly titles. We have to completely ban those from our vocabulary and from our presence. Sometimes it even requires redirecting a conversation or removing yourself from one to avoid participating or being caught up in the mix of someone being discriminatory or hurtful. And understand that African Americans deserve the same respect as all of your other colleagues of different races, your like race or any different race. Then we get to the C, where I want us to crucify every negative term and descriptor used to describe African Americans. We talk a lot about the N-word and all these other words. It is time to crucify. That means never to return again. Crucify all of these negative words. And because of my awesome training at BTUA, if I recognize there's a problem, I have to also offer solutions.
Mm-hmm.
So I figured I'd stick with the ABCs. We can assist in the advancement of an African American agenda. If I'm working on a project, don't shun me just because we look differently or may not work as closely together. We can assist me in what I'm trying to do. Assist my agenda like I do with yours. come with the same vigor, the same energy to assist me in my agenda. And B, band together with African Americans. Don't just give us a seat at the table to say you're diverse. Give me a seat at the table and give me a voice that is genuinely heard. Respect my ideas, ask me questions, and listen to my answers. Take them to heart, take them seriously. And C, we need to compound our compassion for the issues that surround African Americans. Race may not be an issue that hinders you or leads you to be excluded, but I encourage people to avoid speaking against issues that you have not personally experienced. Just because it is not a personal problem for you does not mean it is not a problem. So I just encourage people to avoid commenting on situations that you have not experienced. The question is often raised about, should I be addressed as a Black person or an African American?
Mm-hmm.
Well, unfortunately, there is no one answer to this question. People prefer different things. My grandparents, for example, came along in the 20s, 30s, 40s, and we all know our history of this country and how the African American race was treated. So they transitioned from all kinds of words, and then James Brown comes up with the songs that says, "Say it loud, I'm Black and I'm proud." So they started to own their greatness, and they felt good about being Black because there had been so many other derogatory terms that unfortunately still exist to describe them.
Right.
They are not partial to the African American because they want to stay Black and they stay proud. They feel like they are conforming to someone else's comfort level by not being able to be addressed as Black. Now, my personal opinion is that African American is the most politically correct right now. And if you are ever unsure, just ask the person who you're around, engage in the conversation, and when they give you an honest answer, accept that, even if it's not what you want to hear. Because at that point, it's not necessarily about your comfort as much as it is about honoring the other person's wishes.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're unsure, just ask them, or just kind of pay attention to what's happening around you. Truly engage and be present in the moment. If African Americans are saying we're African Americans, roll with the African American. If they're saying we're Blacks, then they're Blacks. But be open to what makes the other person feel comfortable. Again, it goes back to being inclusive and respectful.
Mm-hmm.
As far as race relations in this society that we live in, I still remain hopeful. I think if we continue to have conversations, honest conversations, and be willing to truly hear the other person's viewpoint, even if we don't understand it, accept it as their truth. And I think if we just continue to do that, we continue to have a better quality of life for us all and move closer and closer with each conversation to our more perfect union.
Wow.
So that's my spill.
That's cool. Thank you, Regina. And Dusty Klesner, he is asking if you're familiar with those YouTube videos that have been making the rounds lately, Uncomfortable Conversations with a Black Man. I've watched a couple. Are you familiar?
I'm not.
Yeah. I think they're interesting, and it's a series called Uncomfortable Conversations with a Black Man.
Okay.
And so, the more we talk about this, the better is what
I agree.
I think. The more that's out there, let's shine a light on this thing. And I feel that way about bullying and, a lot of issues, as you know. You made a comment about that everybody knows our history. And I'm not so sure that's true.
Okay.
So, I visited Washington, D.C., and I visited the African American Museum of Culture there. It's a tough ticket to get into. And of course, with the pandemic, God knows what's going on with getting in there. But on YouTube, with absolutely no money, you can watch a video, a tour of the African American Museum it's a 30-minute video. And if you want a really interesting but fast summary of an inaccurate one of the history of African Americans in our country, that would be one place to get it. Because I don't think everybody does know the history. And, there's a lot of people saying, oh, but that's not right. What happened? And, what did you study? And I think the museum is terrific. Have you been there yet?
I have.
Yeah. I mean, did you come away with a positive impression? I welcome your honesty.
I think it is absolutely phenomenal. And I thought I knew a lot. I learned a whole lot more just kind of walking through it. And I actually intended for it to be a 1-day visit that turned into 3. And I still was not finished because there's so much to discover and know and understand and be able to appreciate why things are the way they are, why some people feel the way they feel.
And I came away, we spent the better part of a day and I was exhausted, and you absolutely could stay 2 or 3 days.
Absolutely.
There's so much there. And I'm really proud that the man who is the director of that museum, Lonnie Bunch, he went to my high school in Belleville, New Jersey. I graduated with his younger brother, Greg. But, really, really proud of that. And it's a huge achievement. But, Congressman John Lewis just passed away. I'm sure everyone heard that. And, oh, my gosh, I mean, what a leader he was. And he was instrumental in fighting hard for that museum to even exist.
Absolutely.
Here's what I've been thinking a lot about this lately, clearly. And I was thinking, when women earned the right to vote, that didn't happen because it was just women saying, hey, we want to vote. And when the slaves were freed in 1865, it didn't happen because the slaves said, hey, we want to be free. Like, it required a lot of other people, white people, doing the right thing to say, no, this is wrong. We have to fix this. So here we are in 2020. In a situation where we still have racism and violence and discrimination in the workplace, and I loved what you said, that it's not only important to have your seat at the table, but to have a voice.
Absolutely.
We talk about that a lot at B2A, is find your voice. So it's going to take more than African Americans saying we want to end racism. It's going to take all of us on this call right now. And I'm so heartened to see all of your names and your supportive. I don't know, Regina, if you can see all the shout outs to you, and they're saying hello to you from all over the country. It's so ask your questions. People are confirming that the museum is terrific, but they're also on Netflix. So many of you have Netflix. There's a great movie. I'm a movie buff. I'm Not Your Negro is one of them. Like, in fact, Netflix has a whole tab now about African American history.
Yes.
Which is a great thing. I'm Jewish, and I welcome when there are, movies about the Holocaust and to really shine a light on the truth about what happened. And I mean, I had a similar reaction visiting the African American Museum as I did, not really dissimilar than when I was in Dachau in Germany, the concentration camp. Like, to be there. Oh, and, my partner, Robert Sanders, who most everybody of you know, I did a gig in Birmingham, Alabama a few years back. And of course, Birmingham is... the nickname for Birmingham is, what is it, Regina? The nickname for Birmingham?
I do not.
At they were telling me that it's referred to as Birmingham.
Oh,
That's where the bombing happened, where the 4
bombing.
little girls
Yes.
were killed in the church. And we visited there and we toured it. And they actually, the client had us staying in a bed and breakfast where there was actually a back stairway that's where the slaves' quarters were.
Yes.
You know, that it's a big deal to know about this in your head and then to physically be in the space.
Absolutely.
It's mind-blowing. I mean, do you go to historical places in
Yes.
Alabama?
Yes. I always try to, but I hadn't heard Birmingham in a while, but
Yeah.
Spike Lee actually did a movie. It's called Four Little Girls, when he talks about that incident and he interviews the parents that
Oh,
were still living at that time. It
yeah.
is an extremely moving. It was on YouTube a couple of years back. I don't know if it's still there. It was on Netflix previously, but that is, and to hear the parents talk about their children going to Sunday school and never coming home.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
at the museum in DC, there's Emmett Till's
Yes.
casket is there. And there's, the line getting in there. His story is just so powerful. If you're in Atlanta to visit, the memorials there and the museum, the African American Museum there is amazing. Benita, thank you so much for being here. And Benita knew Birmingham. She knew, and she says, skin color shouldn't matter. Skin color shouldn't matter, but it does for some, and that's part of the problem.
Definitely the problem.
In the workplace on a day in, day out basis, we're in a pandemic, we're dealing with people over Zoom. When we see that, assistants know when things aren't fair. That's
Yes.
the thing about assistants. Assistants see and hear everything. And if leaders believe that they don't know everything, they're mistaken.
Absolutely.
Because assistants know what people earn. They know if salaries are out of whack.
Mm-hmm.
And they know when discrimination is in play.
Correct.
And I'm here to say, I told you I've been in 14 countries. As bad as things are in the United States, it's also bad in other parts of the world, where racism is systemic. So that's why it's important to do it on Facebook Live, because I'm not sure, we have Canada on the call, but this has to be a global conversation, because I'm not sure there's any country out there that isn't wrestling with this. So we as assistants, when we observe that there is injustice and unfairness, it's not fair, not paying someone properly, not inviting somebody to a meeting who should be in a meeting. Let us in our own ways be an ally. That's my message today, and with Regina. And I know, we didn't get to this place in a second. It's just taken a long, long time to get here. So it's going to take a while longer. But I, for one, want to continue to have these conversations, which may be uncomfortable. Right after George Floyd's murder, there were a lot of white people, not just assistants, saying to me, "Oh, Bonnie, I don't know what to say. I don't know what to say to my Black friends." And I just believe there's no bad time to say, "I'm so sorry. I care, and this has to be hard." And did you welcome people contacting you, Regina? Is it? I don't. What do you think?
It depends on the tone of the conversation. There were a couple of people who I did not want to entertain their conversations, because the conversation started off with those people looting is the reason your kind of people have problems.
Yeah.
So at that moment, I knew the conversation had to be over, because that was not a person who wanted to help the problem or offer support, you wanted to continue to be critical.
What we know from human nature is desperate people do desperate things.
Yes.
And I mean, I was on this is a random thought, but the other day I was on a Zoom call with Olympia Dukakis. You know that I worked with her for 25 years. And of course, she's long retired now, but I was remembering a time at a meeting, and I tell the story in my book where I was watching her just get angrier and angrier because she thought that people weren't getting her point. So she climbed up onto the conference table to make her point. She literally climbed up on there and she was like, "You're not hearing me." You know, like that's all she had to do. She didn't have to, you know, be violent, but you go to the African American Museum and you understand where the violence comes from. We have to move forward.
Yes.
And it can all be part of the solution is really.
And you mentioned bullying.
Mm.
And if we think about bullying, usually bullying happens because one person inflicts pain and the other tolerates. But at some point, the person getting picked on stops tolerating it.
Yes.
And fights back in whatever, by any means, to get the bully off of you or to get the attention needed for someone to intervene.
And so it goes back to Maslow. If we can think to ourselves, when people act in a way that looks like they're resentful or angry, the question we need to ask is, why?
Why?
Who isn't feeling respected and who doesn't feel like they belong? To me, that's the heart of the matter. I really think if we can turn our minds to that, is so-and-so behaving the way they are because they either feel disrespected,
absolutely,
they don't belong. We see it being played out in workplaces all over the world and all over the country. Like there was an article in the LA Times, for example, not about racism, but the headline was "Why Women in Tech Are Leaving in Droves." That the tech companies are having an easy time attracting women, but they have a terrible time retaining them. Why? Because they don't feel that they belong.
Yes.
So they leave. When people don't feel respected or they belong, they're looking for the exit. And before they find the exit, they're looking for ways to fight back.
Absolutely.
It's not that hard. Honestly, it's not that hard to understand. So if we understand it, then we have a shot to solve it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it takes just dealing in that type of truth. People don't just have an attitude. People don't usually just wake up angry just because. Get to the bottom of the problem and care enough to find out the real reason and do something to be a part of the solution.
Yes. To have the conversation, and it's an uncomfortable one because we're not used to having them. And that's why our leaders, Benita is saying that, she's involved her leader. She says that she suggested to her VP that our staff do a book study. It's on the screen right now on I'm Still Here by Austin Channing Brown. And he agreed to it. We're reading and discussing it weekly in our midweek staff meeting. The conversations are tough but needed. Way to go, Benita. Way to go. We need to take a shot at this. What's our choice? Do we have a choice? I mean, what are we going to stay with the status quo? That seems wrong and unacceptable. So what's our move then is to engage all of our team in these conversations to see if we can move to a place where everyone on a team feels respected and that they belong, because racism cannot possibly exist if people feel respected. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely.
Regina? Yeah.
Absolutely.
So Jen, you want to come back on? It's 3:40. The conversation, my gosh, the time went so fast. Regina, do you have any closing thoughts for us?
I am so grateful.
Everybody with.
I am grateful for the opportunity to come here and share my personal experiences. And I hope that I can inspire you to walk away and find at least one person that you may not have attempted to forge any kind of relationship with. And begin with that person a simple hello, genuinely waiting for the answer. And one person at a time, I want us to chip away at this cancer that is destroying our union.
Yes,
I'm so
ma'am.
glad I got to be here.
And Regina Deavens, you see Regina's name on the screen. They can link in with you. And if
Absolutely.
you have any leads on great executive assistant positions in any of
That
those
is
cities, Orlando, Tampa, Delaware, Maryland, we are eager to feed them to her and to all of our colleagues who are in need of help with work. Jen, what thoughts do you have, ma'am?
This was amazing. Regina, you gave me so much to think about.
the ABCs.
It was
Start with the basics.
amazing. Amazing. We're so lucky you were here with us today.
Thank you.
So I want to remind everybody, obviously, in addition to this wonderful topic important topic that we had today, to remind everybody, we're here every Wednesday at 3 p.m.
Yep.
And we want to remind you that Be the Ultimate Assistant on Demand is open.
Right. Yeah. Well, we're going to be, yes, B2A is going on demand. Do we have the website there? learn.bonnielowkramen.com. Check it out. We've obviously had to pivot along with everybody else, and we're hoping that Be the Ultimate Assistant can go live in person again. We're shooting for September of 2021. It's a whole new world, folks. I hope you will stay connected, keep communicating with me and with each other and with your team and your leaders. We have a lot of work to do in this workplace. And I'm telling you, as long as we have burning issues to discuss, Jen and I are going to be here every Wednesday, right, Jen?
That's right.
To tackle them and to invite fabulous guests like Regina Deavens to be with us, to shed light on the important issues that we all need to know to make the most out of our work and out of our lives. So Regina, thank you so much for being here. Great to see you. Thank you, Jen. And thank you everyone for being here.
Thank you, everyone. We'll see you next week. Take care.
Bye.